Here's another idea I wanted to sort of float out there. It was maintaining our two-strand DNA through the very language that we speak would possibly prevent the evolution of the human vehicle that might cause a restriction to our real awareness. It was suggested that the world once shared a common language that was far more complex, that may have been more supportive of our awareness. For as you say, an animal may be in a state of being aware, but cannot recognise it. The next position, that of being a humanoid, is required to start making comparisons and recognising the ears. So if the human was supposed to take an evolutionary leap to further put the species in a vehicle more conducive for recognition, then this is maybe the reason for maintaining the two-strand DNA to prevent this and keep us in creation. As you say, it's not about the vehicle, it's all about the awareness, but yet evolutionary positions do seem to be required to better recognise awareness from animals to humanoids.
Well, yeah, no, that makes sense. It does. And so, but at the point, again, you reach a point where the vehicle doesn't matter. It gets you to a certain point of understanding, you might say, with the personal self, because you need that. But after that, it won't matter what you get almost. Because at a certain point, when you start to recognize your real awareness in the isness, then you really don't need these things anymore. You may still have them. It's like you all of a sudden become a world traveler instead of somebody with a 9-to-5 job where you go home every day. Now all of a sudden, you've earned your way. You've made enough money. We'll just use that idea to where you can travel the world. And you don't have to go back to your house. Now you're going so many other places, and basically, in a way, the house is forgotten, but it's still there. You see, if you ever want to go back to it from time to time. So it's kind of like that. Again, things are looked at in the personal sense, and yes, it is nice to have that help. It's nice to have a lot of help as opposed to struggle. Like on the African show, a lot of the Africans are struggling because of what has been decided and agreed to over there. So they have a struggle more so than the prosperity part, let's say, of people in the United States comparatively. But there's a lot of rich people in Africa too. There's a lot of rich Africans, etc. So yeah, that does help because it's a struggle every day. But overall, as the individual persists with whatever situation they're in, there is always another way, because life is endless. There is always another way, and it may take time to show up. But as you learn to focus and recognize this isness, no matter what your situation is, there's always another way to surpass it. And if it's even to when you lay the physical vehicle down, okay, well then that's it. And then you can go on from there. And so you've left the old overcoat behind. And if it takes that, and it may, and it's going to take you possibly even lifetimes. You may even want to come back and go through certain things again. It just depends upon the individual and how they see and want to see things. So, yeah, it's not according to the DNA so much. That is something that is a reference to certain things, like anything is, but it's not the whole idea. It's like, oh, we have DNA and this is this and whatever. Again, we're in a society that's become very literalized, and it all points to this literalization and all this so-called scientific fact when, good, bad, or indifferent. Again, you look at the attitude of children and you look at the attitude of the adults that are agreeing to the demise of the world. You see the difference. They have, they can be the same DNA, and it's not about the DNA, it's about the view and the attitude, isn't it? So there's always another way to see it. I don't, I take care of this body the best I can. It's kind of like changing your oil in your car. That's what it's like, etc., so that I can do this while I'm here. But it's not really about that. It's not about the diet and whatever. You want to feel okay so you can do certain things, you decide. But it's really, again, it's always about your awareness. And this is what you don't see in the world or the media, do you? It's never referred to. No, only those things that are self-limiting, self-restricting are referred to, aren't they? But they do sound good. Again, it's that book on the shelf. It's a reference, not a reality, unless you make it your reality. Yeah. So again, it's what it is, isn't it?
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Yeah, so in a nutshell, it's nothing to do with the vehicle or the DNA or the genetics. It's all about awareness. Okay, I got a fun thing here to share. It's about the idea of if a tree was to fall and no one was there, would it actually be heard? And as you said, we live in a simulation. This has been picked up by many researchers, including mainstream scientists. The best explanation I heard for this was how our bodies, our vehicles, are like DVD players. The bodies receive information on the electromagnetic energy level and decode it into a virtual reality simulation. So the information we receive is like a DVD. Our bodies, our vehicles, are the DVD players, and collectively we experience a virtual reality computer game. Our senses are the decoding mechanism, and what we see is in a tiny part of our brain, an entire universe in a tiny part of our brains. So our eyes and this part of our brain are like the TV screen, an entire world on a screen as a result of information received via a DVD to be decoded by the DVD player. With this analogy, even scientifically, this proves that space and distance are illusionary, and also time, as the entire life of an individual, their DVD movie, if you will, is on the DVD, and the point that they are viewing is the present, and what has been watched is the past, and what is yet to come is the future, but the DVD has it all on the disc. So this can sort of prove by this analogy that time is illusionary too. And so no matter where you are on the disc, you're always in the present, and it's all there, encased in the apparatus, like a big bubble in creation, and the only factor here is the observer, where the individual is viewing. So back to where I started. So the question on this is, this analogy suggests that we only can see, hear, or feel something if we decode it into our experience. So the theory of if a tree falls and no one sees or hear it, if no one is there, can then be solved. If no one is there to see and decode it into their reality, then it did not in fact fall, and all that would be experienced would be the tree in its fallen state, if one were to observe it then, decode the information of a fallen tree from the electromagnetic through to the holographic. And the part of the game simulation where the tree fell would have not occurred because no one saw it and decoded it. It would then be absent from the movie DVD, like a film set. we won't have the tree fall. Our cast will simply enter the scene with it in its felled position.
Okay, so not everybody can keep up with that, but I see what you're saying, and that is that that's a mechanism, okay, that you're referring to there, and the people or person that you might say investigated that, figured that out, and put it into those terms. That's according to a so-called mechanical mechanism, because it's always referred to as the DVD recording. Yes, and this is in creation. All right, this is something in creation, and because we have technology, we refer to technology now. See, technology is all of a sudden basically superseded the personal self, which the mind and the bodies, they're mechanical. They're all mechanical. They're not real. They're simulators, just like your car. Your car is a simulator. Your television set's a simulator, recorders, or your phone. These are simulators, is what they are. They simulate certain things. They record sounds and etc. And so your personal self does that too. And so again, here's a scenario, another scenario confirming, you might say, the supposed individual as mechanical, you see? And it's like, well, this is what we figured out, and this is what you are. But of course, you, in the personal sense, don't think that. You're thinking that, oh, well, I'm human, I'm flesh and blood or whatever. I'm flexible. I can go this way and that way. And, again, it's putting these ideas out there. And again, did the Indians and the other people, and the indigenous people, did they go along these lines? Because see, we're into the techie era, we're into science. Did they have sciences and all this stuff? No, this is a fabrication, like the cyberspace. That's a created reality, basically, in the astral worlds. It's somewhere in the astral worlds, because it's seen here, it's viewed here, but it's not here. It's with energy, which is basically invisible until you touch it and you feel it. That's where it comes into the physical, but it's a physical astral thing, you might say. So what you're describing there is just like if you were reading a manual about how your car is constructed. It's a mechanical idea is what it is. And because we're so literalized, we're thinking that, oh, gee, that makes sense. We figured it out. Exactly what have you figured out? So the people that had take all the time to put these things together, like Sherlock Holmes, there, you know what, it's becomes in a way another wasted life. Because again, look at the kids that are playing outside. They're not interested. They don't want to know any of this stuff. You know what? They have actually a bigger view that they haven't recognized yet. And so all that time that's put into this stuff, wouldn't it make more sense to present something, earn your way to the real universes? You see what I'm saying? See, we get so involved in this mind stuff, thinking that it's going to equal something, and guess what? It never does it? It's like you buy the computer, and all of a sudden, then you got to buy the next one, and the next cell phone, and the next one. This is technology. It leads you into a nothingness that will become nothing eventually. Eventually, technology will become so much so, which it already is, that what is there? You become lost in it to where you can't figure anything out anymore. And this is the road that many people are taking. So in the meantime, they think that they're figuring out the creations that they've created. It all comes from something they've already created, so they're really figuring out what they've already gone through. They're just saying it in a different way. And realistically, what does this have to do with your real awareness? And look at nature, look at the birds, look at the fish, look at the ocean, the sky, and the sun shining, etc. Would you want that all to be a mechanical simulator like cyberspace too? All of a sudden, we're in this bubble. This is what is being agreed to. This is where the controllers want absolute control. They want everything to be a mechanism that they control, because right now people can individually decide something, and they don't like that, so they continually seduce people into agreeing to these mechanical schedules, you see? And then it becomes so. You unconsciously agree. So what is being presented here is that you won't be trapped in these things that sound good. You see what I'm saying? We don't need cell phones. We don't need this Skype and whatever. We really don't. We don't need any of this because we have a real awareness. So as we start to focus on that, we supersede all this junk and we can leave it behind. But in the meantime, if you keep going down that road like that, you see, that's what you become, you might say. You become just like Terminator. You become that mechanism, you see? That robotized. That's what they want everybody to be, all robotized. So it's a choice, isn't it?
Okay, yeah. The last thing I wanted to say about was when you often say that to help people to be in their state of awareness, that for them to look at what the birds and the animals are demonstrating. And interestingly, I was reading how some animals would not make good examples of this. For example, the elephant has been known to bury their dead and retain memory of where the deceased are, even generations later. And it's almost like, because they're burying their dead, it's almost like them having their own funerals, sort of, minus the expense and elephant-sized coffins. And also maintaining emotional attachments to their dead, which, from a state of real awareness, would not make sense. So, can it be said that certain animal types are displaying behaviour that suggests they are beginning to be able to access free will and begin to encase themselves in bubbles of ideas and remove themselves from their state of just being and begin creating their consciousness? By this we can maybe surmise that the elephant vehicle is a step away from, say, a human one in Newton evolutionary terms, and that their next life they may well be human.
Anything is possible. So again, that the real awareness is making a choice, and it's not that it always knows what it's doing. No, it's just making choices like we are here. We look at society and what's going on, and the elephants look at the elephant point of view. It's with other elephants. Things have been done certain ways, or they haven't, or someone decides to do something else. So that's a reference. That's one thing that they will do. So again, my reference to nature and the birds and whatever, etc., and the animals is that the basic idea is that they don't destroy their own environment. That's the basic idea. What they do individually, you see, that's a choice they make, because again, we're all being busy here every moment, and all of this adds up to eventually all this experience that we go through eventually adds up to helping us recognize. But in the meantime, we go through these things and we watch the animals and the birds, and they do rituals, and they fly a certain way if they want to attract a mate, or they do funny things, etc., according to what they decide their experience to be, and each one will do it a little different. But for the most part, they cling together because, by the very fact, just like us as people, we have relationships with each other because realistically, we're learning from each other. We're being more objective about ourselves, but we decide to see that objectivity. It's available. Everything's available. So again, anything's possible. The real individual decides that. Again, with the whole of life, which is a position that's basically almost impossible to see, if not impossible, from the personal self. Personal self's not going to see it. Personal self's a particular. It's like your car. You can't expect your car to understand you. But yet, when you get into it, you can drive it. It goes to places. It helps you out. But it doesn't have any understanding of you. And this is the personal self. See, this is where we become self-convinced by ideas that we've created and others that have created that we know something, when actually everything is an isness. And to know anything at all, really, when you surpass it all, what's the use of knowing anything when it's better to be what life is? So this gives you your opportunity. But again, the individual, the U-tune, or the soul, or whatever you want to call it, it's going through this process so that it can better recognize this wholeness of life, which is endless, which, again, that's a huge accomplishment. So, again, I just stated that, yeah, the basic idea is just to help people out here that are destroying their environment. The animals are a reference that, look, basically they're not destroying their environment, and yet they have quarrels, and they sometimes kill each other, and etc. You know, a lion will kill other animals, tigers, etc. They'll eat. Elephants will too. All creatures do something in some way, fight with each other, etc. These things happen. Though that's on the personal level. That's their experience. That's their attitude. That's their choice. But yeah, there's a lot to go by. But when you start to just view things accordingly, when you just use that view instead of your mind all the time trying to figure it out or rationalize it or justify it, those are ideas that you've created. And so the journey through life, and now the whole of life, it becomes exceptional. But it becomes a little scary at the same time, because the personal self is very convinced. But then again, you have to deal with it at a certain point to where, gee, you wish you would have taken more time to figure things out, because the life goes very fast, and you will meet that part where all of a sudden the life is over, and you won't know what's happening next, or you won't know. I've seen people go to the real side. They don't know what to do. They're thinking that all of a sudden they're going to pop over there and they'll know. You don't. Basically, you don't know what you're doing here. You don't know what you're doing there. So how is it you're going to figure out, what you're doing at all, etc.? So, yeah, it's a big picture. So whatever the elephant did or whatever in those means, that memory and that burial, that was something that was decided. I would say that not all elephants do that. Some of them do, but that's a generalization, right? That's like saying everybody thinks the same way, which they don't. They think along certain lines, but not exactly the certain way. There's so many variables. But fortunately, now you know, and the elephant can leap from one to the other. That's an individual choice or whatever, etc. So again, it's like when we were in school, certain people, caught on faster to the lessons, and they skipped grades, didn't they? They skipped from 5th to 7th grade. They skipped grades. I didn't. School was pretty boring to me, so I didn't do very good in school for the most part. I was more fantasizing about things, but I saw others that did, and they looked good at the time, but now they don't look so good because they're all caught up in their funny stuff. But anyhow, so yeah, there's more to that, but that was my generalization of that because of what's taking place in the world today, young man. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Duane.
Thank you, everybody. That was fun.